birthday, I was in ICU fighting for my life. 2 blood transfusions, 3 times in the ICU, brought back twice. But thank you for, like I said, I just wanted to let you all know from a person down here
Right.
to come and understand where I'm coming from. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for coming this morning and sharing your story, and sorry for your.
Yes, I would like somebody to speak with me though, please.
And we have a second person signed up at this time.
We do, Madam Chair. It's Jimmy Marshall.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is actually my first time speaking before a board of such, so I'm grateful for the opportunity, and hopefully what I said will resonate. Ms. Kim, how are you? I haven't seen you since Oxford Exchange. Okay. Hi, my issue was with the restrooms. Now, from what I understand, they have already been reopened, but my issue was this. Those restrooms were closed for 2 months, almost 3 months, and there was no way to relieve yourself in case you had an emergency. Now, I don't know who implemented it, but I want to say this. I am a person that has bladder incontinence as well as fecal incontinence. Those are very terrible issues to have when you need to go and you cannot. I asked why were the restrooms closed, and I could get no answer from anyone for almost 2 months. I emailed, I called, I was referred to Ms. Green to voice my complaints about that, and I spoke to her at length. And she let me know what was being done to rectify that situation. And again, as I spoke earlier, yes, from what I understand, they are now open, but I think that it was in very bad taste to keep those restrooms closed for almost 2 months with people that use the public transportation system and they have no availability to go to the restroom. That was very egregious. It really was. And again, when no one responded to inquiries about why this happens, what are you telling us? I mean, okay, you don't mean anything to us. You all have over 100,000 people, maybe 200,000 people riding the system every day, and to deprive people of that, I think that was horrible. It was really horrible. Now, there were other issues as well, and a lot has to do with the benchmarks, the benches, where people need to sit down. Because again, if I don't have this walker, I have neuromuscular issues, and I can't stand for a long time. That causes me problems. Thank you for allowing me to have that time, but hopefully we can work to make some things better and get some benches out at Hillsborough 37.
Thank you. It's good to see you, and thank you for coming this morning and making the effort. I think, are we going to, I think an update on the restrooms and that, I don't know whether Ms. LeGrand, we'll be doing that a little bit later. So we'll talk some about that, but we appreciate you coming this morning. Do we have anyone else signed up for public comment?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and seeing no further public comment, I think we do have someone else present in a quorum at this time.
Yes, you do.
Okay, and that would be Mr. Knight? Okay, just wanted to recognize that in the record. And so with the quorum, Do we have approval of the minutes? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve and a second, and seeing no further comments, instead of a roll call vote, can we just, all those in favor, please? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing no opposition, we'll move on then. We have quite an extended consent agenda this morning, and much, or all of it, I think, has been here prior in committee meetings and vetted with that. So with that, do we have a motion to approve the?
To approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. And once again, I'll just ask for all those in support, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we just approved the consent agenda. It's a lot of actual work that is passed through there. Okay, we will now, yes.
Madam Chairman, good morning, Madam Chair, good morning, board members, good morning, staff. I just wanted to bring to your attention, you did approve the consent agenda. Agenda item 4E includes the approval to solicit for 6 different procurements. One of the 6 is legal services. And I just wanted to share that in the legal services, we have 3 types of legal services that we procure. One is for workers' compensation, one is for our general counsel, and then our other legal services. So for the general counsel is the general counsel to the board. The board has the opportunity to take 2 different approaches. One would be for the board to continue with the same type of, I would say, contract that we have currently with Gray Robinson, which means that you would procure from outside. And if you're going to go in that direction, you'd have to form an ad hoc committee. And that ad hoc committee would serve similar to how you prepared for the auditor solicitation. So that is one approach. The other approach, based on our guidelines, is that you could also have a staff person to serve as general counsel. I'm just raising this because, we're going to put it on the agenda for the next committee meeting, but you'd have to consider, and we'll talk about that at the committee meeting, which approach you want to take. And again, if you want to take the approach to solicit from outside, you'll have to put together your own selection committee, and staff will help you to go through that selection process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And seeing no questions, we'll move on to the presentations at this time. So we'll start with the, here we go, the Transit Center Public Restroom Safety and Security Plan update will be from Ms. Dale Smith, Director of Facilities. And
Morning, Chair, fellow board members, Mrs. LeGrand. Dale Smith, Director of Facilities.
I'm sorry, it says Ms. here.
Oh, that's okay. So today's discussion, we want to talk a little bit about the restroom refresh and what we did to the public restrooms to get them open. And we understand the importance of getting these things open, but we also understand the importance of them being a safe and positive experience. So some of the upgrades we made was we added steel doors. We actually had to procure steel doors to put into the 2 openings of the public restrooms at Marion Transit Center. These doors are continuously locked. We added additional signage that state that the HART restrooms are for patrons only. And we made it in large lettering. We posted it everywhere so people understand that. We actually put steel supports above the ceiling and below the ceiling for the restroom stall pilasters to be strengthened so that people felt safe when they were inside the stall, made them very rigid. We had problems with that in the past. We added a lot of new amenities inside the restroom. We added new mirrors. We added ADA mirrors. We put fast-acting hand dryers, and we put new accessories in each of the stalls to kind of give it a refresh and an updated look. There's a little lobby out in front of the restrooms, and out there we put a really nice LED light to really brighten that entryway up. We put a small stand there with a day porter. That porter actually grants access with a key, opens the restrooms and allows people to go into the restrooms. So we feel like we've made a very positive change to the transit center restrooms there to make it safer and to make it a more positive experience. We actually opened Marion Transit Center November 2nd. They've been open for a week now. We've had no issues down there. Everything has gone really smooth and really been a very positive change. I've got a lot of positive feedback on the restrooms. And our plan is to open University Area Transit Center restrooms on the 16th. Each location will have an attendant, and they'll be open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And at this point, I'll take any questions.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you for your report, I appreciate that. What is HART doing in order to ensure that that attendant is available at all times, no fail? Because if it's now required to have an attendant to open that door in the event that person calls in sick or doesn't show up, do you have sufficient staffing and resources to make sure that at no time during HART's operation that they would not be available?
Yes, we have backup staff at every location. We also relieve them for breaks and lunch as well. So we have backup staff at each location that could allow us there. The only times they would be closed if we had an emergency or an issue inside the restroom was something that broke, and that was something we did in the past where we would close them down.
Is there a way to let that so that
We
when
would,
they're
we would
planning
post
on using
signage,
it?
and the good thing about having the two individual steel doors, in the past, we only had one large roll-up door, so we would have to close both restrooms if one was damaged. Because we have two steel doors now, if there was damage inside the men's room or ladies' room, we could actually close just one of the restrooms and leave one still open.
So is there a policy in place in the event that the restroom is closed and not available to any of the ridership, that the drivers are able to notify residents that are using the transit system that it's not available?
Well, I know we would notify marketing, and marketing would put out a notice, and I'm sure that that would go out to dispatch, which could get to the buses.
So are you going to let your ridership know that are actually on the buses, whether or not they have access to internet or not?
Yes, we would make sure that announcement is out on the buses.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions with regards to this, Mr. Knight, Director Knight?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks again for the update. I had an opportunity last week to go by University and downtown, and I was updated with Mr. Drangville and Ms. LeGrand on the update, and it looked real nice downtown. The people coming in and out, I stayed there over an hour, and also University, talking with the different ones. One of the concerns was the attendant, in case the male or female restroom had problems, and you had a male attendant. They also assured me that they do have a backup to get in if there's any problem. But everything you're saying was there, and the patrons was really appreciative. We were using it back and forth, and they opened the door, communicated with the patrons real well. The gentleman on staff really appreciate it.
Thank you. I believe it's a very positive change. I thank you for that compliment.
Are there any other comments at this time? Thank you for those comments, both the comments. I think, honestly, I was a little taken, excuse me, taken aback by the closures that we had to do, but I have become aware that transit systems all over the nation, everywhere, with big central operations were subject to the same issues, as well as I think more and more public places, such as libraries, others, are having some of the same issues with safety and security and providing, as Ms. LeGrand says, a safe experience and a comfortable experience for our patrons. So it's very regrettable that we had to shut operations, but I'm pleased that it was not as long as I thought, maybe with the supply chain problems and other issues that we had facing us. So I'm grateful that we are, to see these two centers, and going forward, that we will have that available for our customers.
Thank you.
And seeing no other comments, we don't actually have to vote on these. These are just presentations. We'll next move to the Hillsborough Transit Authority reserves, and Ms. Kirk will present.
Chair Camp, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, good morning. This is a presentation on the fund balance reserves, and this presentation is a follow-up to the October 17th presentation to the Joint Committee. Staff was asked to provide some historical data on the designated reserves. Just as a reminder, and this was a slide from October, this is a list of our reserves. We have 2 self-insurance reserves, the risk reserve and the medical benefit reserve. We have the capital match reserve, the FTA liability reserve, and the fund balance reserve that we also refer to as the operating reserve. And then we have the undesignated fund balance, which is basically cash in the bank. This is a slide of the various accounts that we hold for our reserves. And SBA certainly stands for the State Board of Administration. That is where we hold our investments, which are our reserves. So the self-insurance reserve for risks and the self-insurance for medical and the capital match reserve is in one reserve account, or one account with SBA. The FTA liability reserve is in a separate account. The fund balance reserve, which is our operating reserve, now has a separate account, but prior to 2022, the fund balance reserve was in the same bank account as the undesignated fund balance, but we did separate that last year just so that we could account for it better. This is a chart of the 5-year history. As displayed, HART had very little cash in 2018, 2019, and most of 2020. The CARES grant, which was the COVID relief grant, was executed in July of 2020, and we received our first drawdown July 10th, 2020. The total that we received in that year was $16.5 million, so you see we ended 2020 with a much larger fund balance reserve. After the CARES funding, then we were able to use ad valorem to boost those reserves. But as you can see on the second to last row, for the fund balances for 2018, 2019, and 2020 were commingled. The FTA liability reserve, as you can see, was established in fiscal year 2021. And the self-insurance reserves, and you see the fluctuation, they have been adjusted over the years to reflect the results of the actual, the data from the actuary studies for risk and medical. This basically completes the presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Are there questions? Commissioner Overman?
Mostly, I want to say thank you for showing this. It does appear, based on the 2021, as a consequence of the CARES dollars, we were able to restore operating funds to a level that is close to our 90-day, is that our 90-day operating goal? Is that correct?
Yes, well, it's 90 days, but we've really been running about 50% of that, but it's much closer.
It's much closer. So we're still not hitting our 90-day operating reserve, but we're getting closer to that because of the one-time dollars that we got from CARES, correct?
Exactly. And then we have CARES, we have ARP for one more year, and then that's something that the board has to consider after that.
How much are you receiving in ARP dollars that you've actually projected to go into next year's budget?
Next year, I believe it's 18 million, but I'll check. 18 or 19 million is left in the ARP.
So that would be allocated towards the operating expense column?
Yes, yes.
Well, 18 is better than 17, which is what we have in 22, so that's good. But the combination of the two as compared to, say, 2020, correct, is you had 16 million in the combined accounts. For 2021, we had the 15 and change and the 3 million and change, so close to 18 and change. And this year, we're looking at the 17 and the 8 million, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going in the right direction. But again, that's with one-time dollars. What is your recommendation, or is there a plan to replace those dollars, given that we don't anticipate seeing that kind of recurrence?
I'll refer that question to your CEO.
Ms. Lemire? Yes, so, as far as our plan to generate additional revenue, we're looking at several strategies. One specifically is working closer with our partners, and we'll talk a bit about that later, to find opportunities to get funding for some of our service. Also looking at opportunities to get more grant dollars and leverage the existing dollars that we have to get additional grant dollars, and then working closer again with FDOT and the TPO. I mean, the reality is that, without a dedicated funding source outside of the ad valorem, we're not in a position that's unique or new to the position that HART has been in for the last, several decades. So the question is for all of us, how are we going to work collectively to find opportunities to generate revenue in the county? So, I would say the primary approach and focus would be to work with you as the policy-setting entity to find opportunities that we can leverage in the county, as well as the state, as well as the nation, to find additional revenue. It is something that we're going to have to spend a lot of time talking about. The good news is we do have one more year to continue to provide the same level of service that we're providing today. The bad news is the level of service that we're providing today needs to be improved. So again, as we continue over the next couple of months, we're going to be very aggressive at finding ways to increase revenue and be more efficient with the dollars that we currently have.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. As you know, given yesterday's election, you're going to have a different set of board members sitting here. And more than likely, those board members that are sitting on the Board of County Commission will not be bringing a referendum in '24 for additional sales tax, given their positions on taxation. So it's not likely that we would see a restoration of transportation referendum to address our transportation challenges, which includes obviously the transit resources that are very much needed in Hillsborough County. So that's why I asked the question, because it's going to be critically important that your new board members are very aware of the absolute necessity if we're going to continue to provide transit service in Hillsborough County. So thank you very much for your answer. Thank you very much for your report.
And I'd just like to, I think it's really important to focus on reserves, so I'm glad that we have this. I will thank you, Ms. Kirk, for all the clarity that you've given us and the reports that you've given us that have been so good and give me such confidence and faith in the financials for HART. And I'll just say, again, 16, I was only on for 1 month, 17, 18, even though it was called reserves and it had $10 million in it at one point and less than that, I think it actually really went down to 3 or 4 million. It was called reserves, but it was really operating funds. There wasn't a reserve account, and I think even the board didn't understand or know that at the time. I was rather panicked about payroll. And we've had such significant challenges. And so we, through the federal funds that we've received through the CARES Act and the different federal acts that have given transit dollars to us, but for that, we would have had, we would be in such terrible, terrible shape at this time relative to where we are now. So it is something we're going to have to look at. I know that Ms. LeGrand is well aware, more than probably anybody, where this is. But that is something that we're going to have to be considering in the future. And I think it's important to think about the reserves, and I hope we can keep them in a separate category and not start making that our operating revenue, because when we get close to that, we're already, and I've said it over and over again, this is not HART's fault, but we are the most underfunded transit system in the nation for a metro area this size, bar none, not by a little bit, not by a small amount, but by huge, major amounts for different historical reasons. And we're equal to, as has been noted, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, for a metro area like this that's just getting slammed with growth and needs. So I'll just repeat that again, and we can, I think the community is pretty aware of that, even with yesterday's vote being so nearly in support of the referendum. And we have, the Hillsborough County seems to be, in all ways, pretty aware of that need and ready to come to it. But I don't know if the opportunity will be there again anytime soon. And with that, I guess we can move on to the marketing and, the transit development plan for 23 through 32, a major update. I'm sorry, Chair Smith. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. King, Ms. Clark, very good presentation. Thank you very much for the information. Having, as Chair of the Finance and Audit, we go over these numbers quite extensively, and I know you know them inside and out and upside down. It's good that the board has this detail that we have, okay, and recognizes the fact that, as Chair Kemp said, we were very close to the precipice not too long ago. It's important. Maybe we don't communicate it well enough to the public. I don't know. It's maybe something that needs to be done with that. I would like to see during the audit the audit session, the audit period, that some kind of an analytic that the auditors could provide to this board on the projections for these, so that we have that in our pocket to explain the situation. And I know Ms. LeGrand is working feverishly to develop new revenue sources, but the other side could be cost cutting, okay, and tightening our belt where need to be done. And it's going to be important with whatever new board members we do come up with in the next couple of months, that they are educated to what's going on, and that we can present a clear picture of where we do stand as an entity and an organization. There's preconceived notions out in the public, and we need to make sure that when they come in, they see what we see and they understand what we see, and that'll help tremendously. I know I had it when I came on this board. I was under the impression that things were far different than what I found when I got here, and it's a constant public relations job on us to express our concerns to the public. Now, we know what's going on here, but to let everybody else in Hillsborough County know that this is what we got, this is what we're trying to get to, this is how we need help getting to where we need to be. We need new funding sources, be they ad valorem, be they sales tax, be they grants and partnerships. We got to find them. There's not one person here in this board that can come up with the answer today. It's not there. We don't know. Okay, a lot of us were counting on the sales tax to be that conduit to our financial security, if you will. But okay, it's not there. Now we got to find something else. And this board needs to work together along with the new members, and we'll get there because it's the right thing to do for a service that's well needed throughout our community. Everybody talks about, we need this, we need that, this is why we need a great mass transit. I come from Philadelphia. That was never a question, okay? I rode buses since I was my grandfather drove a bus. So I'm well aware of the need of this. So this board needs to work together. We'll get there. We'll get there. And we just need to take it one step at a time. It's an elephant. You don't eat it all at one sitting. So that's just my caution to everybody that we are watching it. The Finance Committee is watching it with Ms. Kirk, and we'll report back on a regular basis, and everybody's comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I would just say we need a modestly good transit system. I'm not even, I mean, that's, where we're shooting for. And so thank you for those comments. And I think, and it's good, your testimony, personal testimony, that you thought things were different, because once you start to really look at these numbers and services and know that, I think any reasonable person pretty much comes to that conclusion once they understand the whole scope. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
And if there's no other comments, we will move on now to our transit development plan with Mr. Omar Alvarado, Chief Delivery Officer. I like to give people's titles since we're still learning where everyone is.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair Kemp, members of the board, and Ms. LeGrand. This is a presentation of the Transit Development Plan. Attached here is the agenda of some of the items that we'll touch today. So I'm going to start first today with the onboard survey. The onboard customer survey we did in August, between the 23rd of August and the 16th of September in 2021. The goal was really to compile information about use of transit in the region by our passengers. Something notable here is that about 10% of what our daily average ridership is represents the respondents in this survey. So I'll go through a couple impressions that we found important. In terms of, we asked people about their access to the system, and we found that 90% of our passengers are walking between 7 to 9 minutes to access a bus stop. In terms of car availability, we found that almost 40% of our riders have access to a car. Additionally, we found that 30% of the riders could also have made that trip without HART, really emphasizing the importance of HART as a system in the community. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the public input survey that we had earlier this year. This was done in July of 2022. It wasn't limited to riders, it was really the whole community as a whole, so riders and non-riders. We found that about 14 questions were proposed in different variations, social media, internet, email, things of that sort. Some of the impressions that came from this survey is we found that a good amount of the respondents lived in the Waimama area or in downtown Tampa. In terms of where they worked, a majority of them were working in the downtown Tampa area. We also asked people what kind of services they use or somebody in their household uses. You'll notice that these numbers don't add up perfectly to 100% because if you're using more than one mode, it was a multiple choice question. Something notable here as well is the flex that you see at the bottom that shows 17% of the respondents. This is a route that's one vehicle, one route that runs Monday to Friday. So really strong showing from that group for sure. In terms of attractiveness of service, the biggest response we got was frequency. Frequency was the most important thing that our respondents thought was important in terms of what would make transit attractive to them. In terms of our priorities at HART, people reiterated the same: frequency. Focus our efforts on frequency and how we can improve that. In terms of infrastructure and technology, people want to see better stops at amenities. They want to see real-time information, not just on their cell phone, but at the bus stops as well. They want to see better shelters and better lighting too. So next I'll talk about our vision, mission, and goals. And really, so a lot of what you'll see in the next section here is really kind of the connective tissue between the surveys and what the community is looking for and kind of what our go forward is and how we can kind of get to those things. So I'll start with the mission and vision first. So in terms of the vision, it's really focused around the core of what we do here at HART. And in terms of the vision, it's really about what we're looking for in terms of the future. We started with about 12 goals in our brainstorming sessions, which included the entire organization for feedback. And then we really narrowed it down to these 4 goals that really focus on our community, our people, and our ability to deliver service. So I'll start with goal 1, and the objectives that you'll find here are really about finding ways to be more efficient with our resources, a continuous focus on our capital plan, finding new funding opportunities, and financial accountability. Goal 2, the objectives here are really focused around delivering the amenities and services that the community has asked for, as you saw in the surveys, and really allowing HART to better enable life without a car in Tampa. Goal 3 is focused around a holistic approach around employee engagement, recognizing our employees, and also a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And lastly, Goal 4 and the objectives around Goal 4 are really around HART being a local partner and a steward of mobility in the region. So next we'll go into our transit service needs. These are slides that are really focused both on the funded and unfunded needs that we have. And we'll kick it off for frequency. So as you heard in our surveys, really the most important thing across the board is really frequency. So what you see in front of you is really a focus on taking 60-minute routes up to 30 and 30-minute routes up to 15 minutes. Something else that we saw in the surveys was focused around how we can make trips quicker. So what you see here is new premium service surrounded around BRT. You also see an extension to the Tico streetcar, and you also see the Tampa passenger ferry. So one thing I will note about the ferry is that it's the only funded project, but that's because the project was funded through a discretionary grant, and it's for the procurement of the vessel, not for the actual deployment of the service. Next, you'll see new limited expresses. So this is more about regional connectivity. We heard some of that in the surveys as well. So these are a list of corridors that we feel could, or rather, the data told us that we could benefit from. New local services. These are some areas that could benefit from some additional service from where we are today. And then potential for on-demand services in the future as well, with the potential for some external funding for some of these too. So next we'll go into the 10-year funded TDP plan. So this plan really allows us to stay the course and sustain the current level of service while making improvements to the customer experience and some of the amenities that we have there. So what you see here is that 10-year capital program broken up into 7 different items. Some of the big pieces here are the heavy maintenance facility, the new AVL APCs for both fixed route and paratransit, and some additional bus stop amenities. In terms of our capital revenue, so about 56% we expect coming from the Fed side. And I will say a big part of this program is also really dependent on us being very aggressive in how we go out for competitive grants. There's certainly some grants out there without a match, so we really want to be as aggressive as we can on that side of things. And here's a quick schematic on our operating revenues. As you guys know, about 65% of our funding on that side comes from the ad valorem. Before I go, the last thing I'll touch is some kind of general high-level implementation plans. So I have 2, one on the operating side for expanding frequency. And really this is focused around us getting our total cost assessment together in terms of improving service from 60s to 30s or whatever else it is. Part of that is putting route prospectuses together. So you guys have seen investor prospectuses. We're thinking of something similar for these individual routes to give you guys some of the benefits, the cost, and kind of what it'll take to run this service. The next piece, obviously, if there is funding and the funding is secured, is going into the actual implementation. So hiring operators and any other staff that we need, procuring vehicles if that's something that's necessary, and then promoting the service, obviously. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to do a ribbon cutting for, a new 15-minute service, promote it on social media and some of the mobile apps, and at the transit centers in person, actually touching the riders that are going to be riding the service. And the last thing, training the operators and getting ready for the service. The last one is more for the larger capital side projects. So, the first part of it is really going out and getting that dedicated funding source approved, seeking both federal and state funding, the potential for hiring a grant writer and being able to apply to those grants aggressively. Then from there, it's kind of the same process, but one additional piece here is really building the infrastructure. So when we look at things like BRT, it's building those fixed guideways, of the additional amenities, off-vehicle amenities at the bus stops. And then on the operation side, same process, training operators, inspecting the vehicles. In terms of timeline, just remember, in terms of hiring a class of operators, it's about a 3-month lapse for us. In terms of getting vehicles from day one, it's about a year to 15 months, 18 months of a process. And that's a presentation. Any questions?
Commissioner Overman.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was very, very helpful. Could you back up onto the slide that shows your revenue sources? Right there. There you go. Yes, that's capital reserves. Here in this, for 2023, we don't show any capital reserves for Hillsborough County funds. But you do show that there are for 24 and then again in 26. What are the sources of those dollars?
So it's not the reserves here, this is the actual revenue.
Right, revenue
that'll be
sources,
allocated to
yeah.
that, exactly. The 17 million in year 2 is allocated to the heavy maintenance facility. So it's kind of a local grant that's allocated to that. And, remember, in terms of the capital budget, it's something that's kind of redone every year because these are just projections. So the one thing that is kind of set in stone is the 23 budget. We've already gone out for the grants and things of that sort. So 24 and on is really dependent on which of these grants come through and what we're actually able to attain.
Okay, and how much are these grants used for operating funds versus capital?
Everything
This
you
is
see on
all
this-
capital?
This is all capital.
All
Yep.
capital. Okay, can you back up one more slide? I believe it is, yes. Actually, one more. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. I'm sorry, I didn't print it
Yep,
out, my
you're good, no
apologies. And I can't bring it up here. Yeah, there.
one.
So when you get to this point, if you're looking to increase, frequency, we don't have an understanding, at least I would love to see in the future, an understanding in order to hit that frequency for the routes that you elaborated in a couple of slides prior to this. There's an estimated cost associated with that. So we know that part of it is capital, which you've illustrated in the capital plan, because we need to buy buses and we need to improve the maintenance. But I would suggest that maybe a larger share would be operating funds, hiring the individuals that actually drive the buses and the folks that work on the buses, and then coordinating the frequency.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm able to see how the impact of actually attaining those goals in our 10-year plan.
Yeah, well, and remember, this is just the funded plan.
Right.
So those, as you saw in those 4 slides, none of those improvements are funded at this point. So we can definitely put together what operating revenue and the impact would be. And like I was talking earlier about the implementation plan, that's kind of part of that prospectus piece to give you all those different costs. Drivers, is there any capital cost? Do we need additional vehicles and those kind of things?
Right, that's to my next question or comment, to address Director Schisler's questions. When we communicate that the reason we don't have 15-minute headways on any of our routes, other than, I think, 2 or 3, right, is largely because the operating funds aren't consistent enough to actually do that. While we may be able to apply for grants on capital to do that, there's no operating funds to actually implement that 15-minute headway. Is that correct?
Currently, that's correct. What's funded is just status quo right now.
Okay. So when we're having challenges although we do have a significant ridership, in spite of the fact that we don't have those headways, which I'm very proud of our residents that have chosen to use our transit system, to hit those goals is going to take a lot more than we have currently planned. So that was why I was asking earlier, and the future board is really going to have to not only communicate what the capital and operating fund need is to be able to generate those revenues, but it's going to take significant fundraising ability by this community to be able to hit the goals that you have set. And I appreciate them, because the more frequent routes that we have, the more our utilization picks up, because it is now workable for folks' lives. The folks down in Waimama have, for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, once an hour service. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're about.
So if they miss it, they lose their job, basically. Is that pretty much what happened? Unless they have some flexibility to be able to show up whenever they want to.
Yeah,
but-
well, I'll say this, I mean, 2/3 of our system right now is on a 60-minute headway, so, the 60-minute isn't exclusive to the Waimam area for sure. It's kind of across the board, across the
Right,
system.
so, I mean, that's why our transit system is not really workable for a majority of the people that live in Hillsborough County, proper, unincorporated Hillsborough County. It doesn't really work for those residents, because the headway doesn't really allow them the ability to make their lives work.
Yeah, and as you saw in the survey, I mean, that's the biggest thing people are talking about, make my trip shorter, give it to me more frequent. It's the way to enable people to move around without a vehicle, for sure.
Right. Well, I thank you for this analysis. It's very, very helpful. But it would be really great to see what the actual number is and communicate that, as Mr. Schizzler indicated, to the public, so that they're clearly understanding why they're not getting the service they need. It's not because we don't want to. It's just the dollars aren't there. And to be able to identify what the funding goal would be, so that we have possibly a better success of actually finding the partners that can help us replace those or create those dollars. Because right now, I'm not sure that information is clearly understood by the public, nor our potential partners.
Sure.
But thank you very much for your report. It's
My
very
pleasure.
helpful to see where we are. Thanks.
Director Schizzler?
Thank you. Good presentation, thank you. I have 2 points. One you already answered with the information for Commissioner Overman. Second point, more of a comment or a suggestion. One of my HART-related duties is with the Disadvantaged Transportation Board that meets. I had the opportunity to chair that meeting last month, and there was a presentation given by staff regarding parks and so forth. And after about 10 minutes of watching paint dry, people finally realized what this was all about. And it was many of the riders that utilize the Sunshine Line and so forth, they have to meander through parks and walkways and trailways in order to get to where they can pick up the service. If you made a comment earlier in your presentation about how long it takes people to get from their homes or business to a pickup point. I think you said it was like 9 minutes or 7 minutes.
Between 7 and 9 minutes.
7 and
yeah.
9 minutes. When we got done with the presentation, we realized, well, that's what they were trying to say. People have to go over river and dale to try and get to the pickup locations. And it might be something that HART can utilize, that same information. They're not done with it yet, but when they're finished, it might help us with maybe realigning some of our locations. I don't know, I'm not saying it will, but it might be something, we need to expand our bag of tricks in order to make our services more accessible when and where we can. So I would just make the recommendation to reach out to Josh Barber in the county, and he could possibly, I'll give you what I've got, but he would be a better conduit for that information. So we got to think outside the box, and these are even if it's one little thing that made it better this week. So that's one of the
and for
comments.
me, the more mobility data we have, the more we can be very
Exactly.
acute about the changes we make.
Exactly. So just a thought, but otherwise, great presentation. Thank you for looking into this.
Are there any other comments by any board members? I thought it was a great presentation as well, very good. And the message that you made, and I think we're reflecting, but it's the same message all over the nation. It's just that we have as I've stated before, a much larger problem with it than anyone else is frequency. And to think that we have 30 routes, and until this was brought to my attention that this is the way it is, 30 routes, 19 hourly, 11 less than hourly, I think that really drives it home for people. And, looking at that chart and thinking of moving the dial on that if we possibly can, where it was the hourly routes to a half hour, the half hourly to 15 minutes, or, a lot of transit comes in 4 and 5 minutes at other places. But for us, this would be huge if we were able to double the frequency of our entire system. And it would get us to such an incredible place. And as well, I know the focus, and, we need to be thinking about this, is our bus stops are just, they are desperately needed, especially in the rain and the sun and and everything else we have. And again, those are modest places for us to come to our modest, improvements, but it's something that is just staggering to think that we haven't been able to get there yet. So I think that the really big message, I hear premium and I'm always like, what does that mean? Not a fancy bus or train or whatever, but frequency. That's what premium means to me, and that's what most people are desiring deeply, is the frequency. So I'm glad that that's our focus and emphasis, and no surprise that the public does that, and surveys all over the nation, everywhere. That's what people always note as a priority. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for your time this morning.
And with that, we will move to our final presentation of the morning, Marketing and Communications Plan. Ms. Terry Wright, Chief Customer Experience Officer.
Madam Chair? May I just jump in? So what we're going to do next is we're going to have a presentation on our marketing and communication plan. This was a plan that we have come before you for permission to advance, and there was a request at a previous meeting for an update. So today we have the consultant here. So I would like to ask our consultant, Scott Wilkinson from AlphaView, to come forward, and then his colleague, Ms. Arlene De Benejo, will come follow behind Mr. Wilkinson to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for the time to spend a few minutes with you this morning. I'm Scott Wilkinson. I'm the founder of AlphaView. AlphaView is an analytics firm. We specialize in working with public transit agencies around the country. And we're excited to have the opportunity to start our work here in the Tampa region. The goal of this program, I think there are 5 primary points, and I'm actually going to add a 6th. First, to have real, comprehensive, real-time insights into customer and public satisfaction. I'll show you exactly what we've done in just a moment, but we've already gotten to a point in just the last couple of months where we are collecting and updating the HART team on a daily and sometimes more than daily basis about what the customers and the public are saying and thinking about transit service, and the value of transit. 2, we're able to understand perceptions of community value. It can be very hard for a transit agency to understand what customers are saying versus what the public is saying, who might be talking about transit but might not be using this service. We're able to show those 2 things in balance now, what your customers are saying about operational issues on a day-to-day basis and what the public is saying in terms of the value of transit. 3rd, to improve ROI. If you don't measure, you can't make improvements. We now have a strong measurement system in place so that HART can make decisions with an ROI focus. We call it continuous improvement. Make a decision, measure, improve, make another decision, and continue to implement. 4th, reporting and accountability. I think this is very important, and it gets to what I was just talking about. Now that we have measurement in place, we can see what's working, what's not working. We can invest in what is working and be sure that we're not wasting resources and time in what's not working. And fourth, I think this is really important too, is having a common measurement for the staff, for the team. Everyone now is on the same page. We have a common understanding of what customers are saying and thinking, what the public is saying and thinking. This allows the team to be on the same page and pointed in the same direction. And I'll just note a sixth item. Just last week, the U.S. Department of Transportation issued new guidance on public outreach. This guidance is now a requirement, an expectation for grant funding from US DOT. The fact that we have this measurement system in place for HART really puts HART at the vanguard of what is now a requirement and expectation from US DOT for measurement of its public outreach efforts. And I think that's going to be a big asset moving forward. So our work to date, what have we done? The first thing we did on the technical side is we really took all of the sort of data sources that are accessible, where the public is engaging with HART, and we're putting them in one place. So this is social media data. This is data coming in from emails and web forms. The call center, we're actually taking the audio files from the call center and transcribing them. And including that in our analysis, and also all the data that's coming in from See-Click-Fix. Every engagement that comes in with HART, we're coding it for the topic. So what's the topic that people are talking about? Is it bus service? Is it some other operational issue? Is it the streetcar? Which bus line? And we're coding those engagements for sentiment. Is somebody saying something positive? Are they saying something negative, which of course is something we might need to address? Or is it neutral? There's a lot of neutral engagement out there. That's usually represented by people information sharing, just asking questions about service. This all provides us a baseline now against which we can measure. And is also going to be very important in feeding in and measuring the efforts from the brand and marketing plan that Arlene's going to talk about in just a minute. I'm just going to give you a quick couple of examples of the type of information that is available at our fingertips now. This is a chart by zip code showing engagement with HART over the last 60 days by zip code. On the left is engagement per capita. So in each of these zip codes, this is the number of individuals per capita who have engaged with HART over the last 60 days. And you can see the darker areas are the more intense areas, the areas where we're receiving more engagement. On the right is sentiment by zip code. So this shows us where people are engaging positively and where people are engaging negatively. This lets us go into very specific areas and see where we have problems and what might be causing those problems. There's a lot of different ways that we can slice and dice this data. We're also able to show this information, for example, by city council district, by supervisorial district. This is can be helpful for you to understand public perceptions, problems, what individuals and residents are saying in your own districts. This is also going to be very useful. We can show this information by congressional district. So when it comes time for earmark funding, there's a lot of competition for members of Congress, people requesting earmarks. This is an opportunity for us to show local members of Congress when there is support for a project that we might be interested in receiving or pursuing earmark funding. All of this information and more, if I can, is available, and like I said, updated daily. I've only given you a small picture of what's here because there's a lot of data. We're able to show positive and negativity by the source, how people are communicating, again, what topics people are talking about, lots of different ways to show this geographically. We can even now show for each of the bus lines in service, what people are talking about who live within a mile of each of those bus lines. This is giving clearly the ability for HART to make much more data-based decisions for its operations, for its marketing communications, and for really lots of other applications. And so this is also informing the marketing and branding plan that Arlene's working on and is going to talk about next. I'm not sure if we get to full screen here. There we go.
Good morning, Board Chair, Board members, Ms. LeGrand, and staff. My name is Arlene DiBenigno. I'm the President and CEO of Conversa. We're a minority woman-owned full-service marketing and communications firm in Tampa. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the marketing and communications plan. We've been working with the staff for the past few weeks, certainly trying to find opportunities where we can enhance the HART brand. As Omar discussed earlier, our mission at HART is to take people to the places that enhance their lives. And our vision for HART is to be the highest customer-ranked mobility provider in the Tampa Bay region. HART has 4 major goals: to be financially sustainable, prioritize customer experience, support employee success, and enhance community value. For us, the objective is to provide the opportunity for HART to clearly define itself as a preferred mobility provider in the area. Beyond influencers and employees, HART customers, and most importantly, the public at large, needs to understand that the authority is the fabric of the local transit community. Our recommendation is that we accomplish this by the following 3 points: creating partnerships with major companies and community organizations and nonprofits in the area, creating partnerships with other key community agencies, such as the Hillsborough County School District, the Florida Aquarium, Zoo Tampa, and Port Tampa Bay, to name a few, and then continue to demonstrate HART's essential role in the community as a vital business channel and workforce driver. Our approach is two-pronged: one, to develop partnership opportunities targeted to a strategic mix of companies and agencies in the area that are interested in reaching high-potential audiences, and then assist partners in reaching new customers who patronize areas well served by transit, such as malls, hubs, and transfer centers. Some of the brand words that first came to mind with our team and working with the HART team was the list of words that are on the screen right now, but certainly HART, futuristic, motion, point A to point B, innovative, and destination were the words that jumped out to us the most, and certainly what we want to do, use to enhance the agency. Some of the admirable brands that we looked at across the country were the Utah Transit Authority, the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, the Chicago Transit Authority, even the Bangkok Mass Transit System, VIA, which is located in San Antonio, Texas, Lynx, located in the Central Florida Regional Transit Authority, and then the Charlotte Area Transit System. The color palette that we look to recommend to the agency is responsive of certainly looking at the area of Tampa. With the Navy, in Tampa Bay is Florida's largest open water estuary, forming coastlines of Hillsborough County. The color navy signifies Hillsborough's intrinsic tie to water. HART's varied public transportation options enable the community to connect to many of Hillsborough's waterfront destinations. With the gold, on average, Tampa has about 246 days of sunshine per year, a marked increase as compared to the U.S. average of 205 sunny days. People seek Hillsborough County's sunshine, and HART strives to deliver this sunny disposition through the use of this brand color. And with that, we come to the powder blue. Along with the warmth of the sun comes the blueness of the skies of Hillsborough County. This brand color exudes freshness, a nod to HART's commitment to reduce its CO2 emissions by 2026 and make Hillsborough a cleaner and safer place to travel. The current situation that we find ourselves in is that the advertising revenue constitutes 1% of HART's full operating budget, which is $114 million, which amounts to $1.5 million per year. Under the current model of advertising, the advertising benefits the advertiser. Moving to a sponsorship model benefits the HART brand as well as the community. To retain HART's current advertising revenue as well as elevate the HART brand, we would move to a sponsorship model. This would offer companies and organizations in the area that are looking for the opportunity to display their brand-approved advertising using a variety of options, which include the HART bus, where we would be able to utilize the exterior, both the side paneling as well as the rear paneling, verbal announcements in the interior of the bus. We would be able to utilize bus shelter advertisements and wraps. With the HART paratransit vehicles, we would be able to use the exterior panels for sponsorship advertisement. With the streetcar, we would be able to use the exterior and the interior. And then something that has not been pursued to date is the website, which also presents a potential for the future. So through extensive research that our team conducted, we reached out to a number of agencies across the country that are using the sponsorship model. The first is the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, known as the RTA, who developed a sponsorship model with the Cleveland Clinic and Metro Health. It allowed both healthcare agencies to advertise both on the exterior and the interior, as well as the Transit Authority's website. The second is the Greater Richmond Transit Company, who formulated a partnership with Bon Secours and VCU Health, and similar to Cleveland, were able to advertise both on the exterior and the interior of the vehicle. The overall strategy that we recommend is that in order to generate revenue, again, while elevating the HART brand, through our due diligence, which included calls to a variety of transit agencies across the country, we quickly realized that many of the agencies that had moved to the sponsorship model had successfully generated anywhere between $10 to $30 million over a 5-year time frame by implementing diverse revenue-generating models. And we looked at a couple of the different potential sponsors in the area that we would recommend approaching, and they would consist of Moffitt Cancer Center, Florida Cancer Specialists, the University of South Florida, Public Supermarkets, Baycare Health Systems, to name a few. Across the country, transit agencies have been very, very successful in using this model, and based on our research, it would be fruitful for HART because there is not only the potential for additional revenue, but more importantly, we are bringing HART into the fabric of the community. We are bringing HART into the relevance of where it operates currently. Making HART more relatable to its rider base and the community will assist with HART's branding identity and projects moving forward. We are attempting to improve HART's footprint in this community, which is the successful way it has been done at other agencies across the nation. As we move forward, our team feels confident that we will be able to capture the $1.5 million as well as go beyond that. And with that, the presentation is concluded. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Director Johnson.
Thank you. Can you go back to this? One of these days I'm going to remember that. Can you go back to the last slide that you were on where it was discussing the potential sponsorships? Yeah. How did you come up with the potential sponsors or the kind of the partnerships on there?
Looking at a variety, and these are just a few that we established that would look to this type of a model, reaching out to a few of them to see if there was interest, but certainly these are different organizations in the Tampa region that are well recognized.
Okay, and the main reason I was asking is HCC has been a big supporter from an advertising standpoint. I think our advertisements on those buses have been pretty synonymous with our students for the last few years. So I think it'd be interesting to be able to kind of see, where that could go at some point. Mainly, our riders are going to those campuses, going to all the, areas within the county. So would be interested to be able to see how that would work out.
Absolutely, and these are just a few, and Hillsborough HCC was one that we did discuss because to your point, their ridership is
I just didn't know if there was an actual reason why just those particular entities were on there, but that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. This is, it was an excellent presentation to kind of give us a better understanding of what we were looking at. But I did want to go back to the slide where you do the current situation. It sort of implies that the advertisers are the only one that benefit from this when $1.5 million is a benefit to HART. And it's not something we want to forego at this point. But sponsoring does assist. So it's not a in lieu of. It means we would continue to do advertising on the exterior of the bus, but it would just be a different method of going about it. In addition to that, you've indicated in the slide that is part of the next slide, where you're indicating the various different methods of additional advertisement revenue that would be prospectively as a sponsorship versus a full advertising. So this board has always had the ability to identify or set parameters on who we should or would want to provide advertising on the bus, whether it's inside or outside. We had that at one point in time, but I think we sort of let it go for a variety of reasons, largely because that's where the money was, I think. But that's why I was curious about the partnerships, you know, and making sure that those agencies or those organizations, you know, are going to be able to actually fulfill your estimate of $10 to $30 million in potential revenue, additional revenue, or inclusive of the 1.5 that we've currently have with the advertisers that have been longtime sponsors through advertisement of the HART system, which I think is good. Have you done the comparative loss of revenue comparison between a full wrap of those that had been consistently advertisers or sponsors, however you want to look at it, of HART system as compared to utilizing only a side or a rear panel exterior advertising model?
We have not at this time, and Ms. LeGrand, I don't know if you want to expand upon that.
Sure, thank you. Madam Chair, may I respond? Yes. So just first, point of clarification, the way our advertising contract works now and the way advertisements work, it's dictated by law. So the board does not have the ability, nor do I, nor does staff, to specify what we will permit or disallow. We have to adhere to what the law says we can advertise. I just wanted to clarify that. As it relates to full wrapping of the vehicle, regardless if we stayed with this current model, we will no longer wrap and cover our windows. It is a safety issue. I know we had a presentation several months ago about the fact that you cannot see inside the vehicle from the exterior of the vehicle. We've heard from TPD that it also prohibits them, even when we call and we say there's an incident, they can't see what's going on in the vehicle. Our road supervisors, I'm looking at Mr. Drainville, he's given me many a conversation about the challenges we have when there are buses that are fully wrapped. That's from a safety perspective as well from a staff perspective. From the customer perspective, being inside a vehicle that's fully wrapped, it is very difficult for you to see outside of the window. We've also heard from customer service perspective that, especially customers who may have some visual impairment, it is difficult to see where your stop is coming next when the exterior is wrapping the windows. So as far as, an analysis of the differential between a full wrap inclusive of covering the windows versus, if you will, a partial wrap keeping the windows uncovered, that was not requested of the consultant because we knew we were moving in another direction. What was requested was to ensure primarily that we have a net zero loss of the revenue that we're generating currently, and then secondarily, how do we increase the revenue from this approach? So that's what we have asked them and charged them to do, and that's the information they're providing today. What I'll say that is different between this approach and what we're currently doing, if we move into a direction where we're not going through advertisements, again, which is a legal term, It's not just, I can say I'm advertising something with you, but I'm talking about it under the auspices of what's required when we have an advertising contract versus sponsorships. We can do what you suggested. We can then have conversations and we can target who we'd want to sponsor. Just like if we were throwing, I would say, a conference and you put out, sponsorship opportunities. And I asked Temple Terrace, will you sponsor this event? I asked the county if you would sponsor. We can choose who we're going to go to and ask. We would have a formal agreement, so it wouldn't be a handshake deal. There'll be terms associated with the sponsorships. There'll be levels of sponsorships. There's a lot of detail into what would occur between where we are today and where we would be in full implementation. But again, as we talk about elevating the brand, several of the conversations we've had prior to this presentation has been, how do we show the community, especially after what happened last night, after what happened in 2018. All of, what we're seeing is that, and from Scott's presentation, the community is talking, but they don't really know what we're doing. Mr. Schisler said the same thing, right? It's our opportunity to tell the story, let people know where we are today, why we're in this position, and what we need to do to move forward. If we can show through advertising on our vehicles that we are part of this community, and community sponsors, businesses, institutions, organizations that are well-respected have chosen to work with us and partner with us, that's taking us, I would say, and from the analysis from the consultant and their research and data is saying that it puts us in a posture and in a position where we're starting to be viewed more as a community value and asset than an ancillary service that helps other people get around. Right, and I will close on this. Mr. Alvarado in his presentation, talking about the 30%, right, of the people who have access to a car, but they are still choosing to ride our service. Someone would say, why are you focusing on the 30%? You're not focusing on the 70%. The 70% are folks who are our customers, and we work hard to ensure that they have the best service possible. But what we also want to do is expand our capture area. And if today we know 30% of our community who have access to a car are choosing to use our service, we know at a minimum we're providing a service that is beneficial. Now it's time for us to take it to the next level, so that when we come before you, we can say we have, such a great mix, a diverse customer base, that we're really representative of the entire county. When we start having conversations about needing more funding to add more service, people will understand because they're a part of what we're doing. So I just wanted to, explain why they were not asked to look at the differential between a full wrap and a half wrap, as well as explain the difference between sponsorships and advertisements.
Okay. You're finished, Commissioner? Okay, and Director Schisler?
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. I do have a question, though. I have the creativity of an ant. Could you look on page 19?
19?
19, yeah, in your presentation. Can you bring that up? Just as an academic question.
Mm-hmm.
Could we switch to ClickShare, please?
There we go. Now, we're saying that the three colors that we're talking about would be in this combination. The yellow might be the green, the blue might, okay, all right, good. So make sure I don't, I'm lucky clothes don't clash. So anyway, this is very, very good. Getting the wraps off the buses is something I've heard since we've been here. Establishing our brand. This is critical to selling who we are to us. We sometimes get schizophrenic. What are we? We're 1-800-PAIN or 1-400, whatever it is, or Morgan and Morgan. So I like it. I think it's fantastic. I think this is the way to go. And your projections on the revenue generation far exceeds what we were doing. And if we can kill if we can attack 3 or 4 issues with one stone, I think this is well worth it. My question would be, what's our next step? approval of this type of a framework and kicking it off so that we can move forward with it. That would be my question at this point. But I think this is great. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Finally understand what you were trying to do, and this is good. Thank you.
Ms. LeGrand, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, so our next steps were, so first and foremost, I want to say thank you all for coming along this journey, right? Because we've been talking about this. You approved for us to solicit the services of our consultant, and it's taken a while for them to go through the analysis and have something that was, ready to present. Our next steps will be to, get your approval as far as the direction that we're going. The consultants will work on, really how the schematic will look, where the color placement will be. I think the story behind the colors, I've learned so much that I didn't know about things like that, but the stories behind what each shade means and why it's connected to our community. And then also, moving forward with putting together the plan for the sponsorships. Now, recognizing that we have a current contract, we did agree, I want to say at the last meeting, that we would look to extend the current contract. I think the request was for 6 months, which would give us the time to transition from where we are now to this new model, so that's what we're working on doing. And then we will come back to the board for 2 things. So one, to extend the contract. I don't think we voted on it. I think the question was, would we be open to doing that? And we looked at the timing and it made sense. So one would be to come back to you for approval to extend existing contract that we have for advertising. And then the second would be for approval to move forward for a solicitation for a new contract. Now, I would say one caveat, we did get approval in the past for, to solicit the next advertising contract. But what we would have to do, and I'm looking at Ms. Kirk, we may have to come and ask for a modification of the language from advertising to sponsorship, Ms. Kirk. Do we need a new resolution for that? I'm unsure.
Mr. Grant, I can certainly address, but I'm going to let the chief procurement officer answer that question.
The director of procurement? Mrs. Kafus? Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, I would agree. I think that the resolution that we brought to the board and it was approved before is not the direction that we're going now, so it would need modified.
So that would, thank you, Mr. Kafus. So that would be the next step, would be to come before the board for approval to extend the current contract and also approval to solicit a new contract, which the timing should be that by the time we solicit, interview, award, we'd be able to transition from the one model to the next model.
Thank you. And you had one.
What I guess I'm trying to say is 2 things. One, what do you need from us today so that you can start running down the road with this? And 2, assuming the planets align, what type of a time frame are we looking at that we could actually have flip the switch and the rebranding is actually out on the street?
So a couple of things. As far as the actual rebranding of our vehicles without sponsorships on it, we'll be able to do that as soon as we've developed the design. We have several vehicles right now, even under the current, structure, that do not have advertisements on it. So that we would prioritize wrapping the vehicles without advertisements, even under this existing contract with the new HART brand. And then we would transition those vehicles with advertisements to the new model as we transition to the new contract. So we would start with the new wrapping of our HART at the top of the year.
Do we have the marketing horsepower to go out and secure the new sponsorships or modify the existing sponsorships?
That is the consultant's scope of work. So
Yes.
they have the ability to go and do that, and that's the next
That's
step in
your
their
job.
process.
That would be the next step, yes, sir.
Well, I think this is great. Thank you, Mr. Grant, and staff and the consultants for putting this together. We've been talking about rebranding for years, and this is finally, we're getting this going, and I'm really excited that we're doing this, and I appreciate it. And whatever we need to get this thing going today, I'm all in favor of it, and I'll make any motions required in due time.
Overman?
Yes, thank you. So that's one, I was going down that same line. So the cost of transition from, excuse me, the non-branded buses to the current color scheme. It's one element of the cost of moving towards branding. And then the cost of working towards a branding and finding the sponsorship was the other thing that I was trying to identify. So a timeline to ensure that the process towards this branding includes not losing the 1.5 million, because that's not something we can afford in terms of revenue, but then adding on. So are we going out to RFP for a development director for sponsorships? As opposed to what we've done in the past, which is an RFP for advertising?
Yes, so for a point of clarity, you're asking if we're going to go out for a director?
Well, let me make sure I'm clear. We have our consultant here that's offering us a marketing plan. That marketing plan is will require the implementation of a development director to go out to talk to nonprofit agencies to raise funds for the advertising that is projected as part of the sponsorships. So that's a full-time job for this agency. And so we're either going to do it internally or we're going to outsource it to an agency that's comfortable with being able to replace that advertisement income and enhance it to the $10 to $30 million that you've illustrated in this particular example. So my question is the goal here to have our marketing agency actually be the fundraising element associated with the $10 to $30 million that's being described here?
Are you asking if there's going to be a staff person who does this marketing or if the consultant will do it? That's your question?
Are we going to do it internally, or are we going to actually have for example, sponsorships are typically done as a consequence of development directories. Those are individuals in the philanthropy world or in the advertising world that are understanding their market for being able to approach HCC or Tampa General, so is that going to be done internally, or is this agency or this team going to be doing that work, or is there going to be a separate RFP, and what does that timeline look like?
Okay, so, and I appreciate your question. So what we're looking to do is to solicit a contract for sponsorships. So that contract in that solicitation would be to do all the things that you're talking about. So the companies the transit agencies that are like on the screen right now, Cleveland, they work with contractors, kind of like how we have Vector for advertisement. They have other companies that their whole portfolio is doing this work. So as Ms. Zickafoos mentioned, we'd have to go back out and get approval to change our solicitation from advertisements to sponsorship with the understanding that the sponsor that would be their job. So just like, Vector finds 411 Payne and they find Morgan & Morgan and they find Coca-Cola or whomever they find to, advertise on our vehicles, whichever company is successful, they will be doing the same thing. The difference here is that we can direct them to the organizations that we would like to have as sponsors on our vehicles. Our marketing team here, since they're local, they have started to do, I would say the cold calling to find out which entities would be interested in participating. So for example, I actually had the pleasure of being a part of a meeting with Hillsborough County School, I'm gonna mess it up, HCPS, Hillsborough County Public Schools Executive Director, and talking about the sponsorships, and found out, would HCPS be willing to sponsor and advertise on HART vehicles? And it was a positive conversation because in a lot of cases, we already have public entities that are paying to advertise in locations. And they are not even thinking about the fact that if you put a card inside of the bus that says, get your immunization. I'm making this up, he didn't say that, but I'm just saying, if you put school starts on such and such a day, make sure you get your shots, right? People, we haven't, as an organization, been going to our partners, our other agencies, and saying, hey, do you want to advertise or put this information in our vehicles? I know you and I have had conversations about some initiatives that have been going on in the county. Are there opportunities to use the HART vehicles? So that's what the team is doing right now. They're reaching out to find out where the interest is, what budgets do people have associated with marketing and advertising, and then also understanding, which is important for us, what their budgeting cycle is. You know, are you calendar year, your fiscal year, when do you get your money? Like, all of that is just for us to do the due diligence to see if there was even the opportunity here to move in this direction. And what they're coming back with today is that there is the opportunity, there is the demand from the community and the need to utilize our buses in a way to elevate those entities' brands. So I hope that answers your questions. But the solicitation will do it. We are not looking to hire staff to do this.
Helps clarify, thank you. I was trying to figure, are we going to do this in-house or out-house? But I mean, clearly the work has to be done, and it has to be done on an ongoing basis because you get a sponsorship for a year, and you know, it has to get renewed and all those kinds of things. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Schisler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Commissioner Oberman's point, I don't believe that there would just be the 1.5 would disappear. I would see more of a sliding as more buses come online, or, you know, there would be a natural progression or evolution transitioning from the one side to the other side, and so that there would be a net zero impact to our financials. That would be my expectation of the way the plan would be created. Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add, if no one else, I'm very excited about this change, and I didn't even know about the sponsorship versus advertising possibilities, so that's something new that I've learned more recently. And as you stated, and I don't think it can be understated, when you have the advertising, because we're a public agency and under, the legal requirements, we can't be as, we can't look at the kind of sponsorships as we can do under this. And so it really gives us an opportunity here as well. Bus wraps, are a pretty new thing, but they're problematic for public buses in terms of what you said, safety, vision for both those inside and outside. And I've also read or seen that it's more foreboding to customers and riders when they see a dark bus and they can't see inside, not only for safety, but just in terms of approachability or thinking. And I think our bus advertising that we've had has not been a good image for us. And so the fact that we could do this, and perhaps, and I've always thought it should probably result in more revenue, is just, I think, all around a very, very good thing. So I'm looking forward to moving this, and I think the point of today was to have further conversation, clarity, understanding, and just, about where the board, in general, their thoughts were about this as we move forward.
Thank you. And I just to a point of clarification, the illustration, for example, that we have up here, that is not a bus wrap, and those are dark windows, and you can't see through them. So we're no longer having dark side windows as a plan? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
So we're talking about, you're talking about this image on the screen right here? So those, no, I think she was talking about the last slide.
This one or even the last one. The last one is not a full wrap. I can't see anybody in any of those buses anyway, so.
Right.
For point of clarification, we will not have windows where you can see into the bus any more than we already can for those non-wrap buses, correct?
So the windows on the buses are tinted, and that's to protect us from conserving the energy, because it's hot here. So if the windows aren't tinted, then, all the heat from outside would be felt inside. So the tinting level that we have meets the standards that you can still see inside of the bus. I think in this static image, you can't really see, but if you're outside and a bus goes by and it doesn't have wraps over the window, you can see inside of the bus. So we'll continue to have the tinting, I think that's what you're seeing in this image. We'll continue to have the tinting on the vehicles. We're just saying we won't have the wrap. So if you see like a vehicle that says 411 Payne and it's pink and it's over the entire bus and you really can't see inside, that's what we're talking about when we say. So even if you look at the images that are on this slide now, you know, even though they have like a little, I don't know, loop or wave, thank you. They have a little wave. It's still done in a way that you can see inside of the bus. It's not prohibiting you from seeing out. The entire window isn't closed. So we'll come up with some design standards of what we would like, but again, looking at Mr. Drainville from, you know, an operations perspective, having visuals inside of the bus is beneficial for us, as well as from the customer's perspective, being able to see out.
Understood. Thank you very much.
And just for, I mean, these are photographs, that's why you can't see as you see when you're standing there, but I've been watching. We do have some buses that aren't wrapped, and you can totally see in the windows even though they're tinted, both in night and during the day. But I've also watched system buses and trains around and seen the differences in a few different places recently. And this tinting comes off like that, looks that way in a photograph, but it's not what you actually see if you're standing there.
Do we need a motion?
I don't think we do need a motion.
You have enough?
You do not need a motion, you don't have a quorum anyway at this point.
Yeah, I think this was just to discuss and move and understand and have a, yeah.
Chair Kemp, I have a quick question. With the three-color system, adding the yellow, is that just for the buses, or is that going to be the yellow incorporated into the general HART advertising and branding for everything?
Yes, so, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I respond? So yes, we're looking to incorporate the yellow into all of our materials. The good news is, and this was something I also talked to the team about, if you really look at it, we're just adding the yellow. So it's easier for us to just add on instead of starting, like if we came up with pink, green, and, I don't know, some other color, purple, then, you know, we would have to like really deliberately go through the system and rip everything out, and which we don't have the money to do that. So this allows us to incrementally add the yellow, update our design, and still, as we transition, it's not like a big major shift, so.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions at this time, I think, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the CEO's report.
Okay, so this has been a great meeting this morning, and I thought it would be appropriate, since we pretty much are starting our new fiscal year, to just give a little snapshot of what we've accomplished over the last fiscal year. Next slide, please, or can I, or do I have to go up there? Okay, so, next slide. As you know, our purpose really is to take people to places that enhance their lives. And then our, you know, I would say our vision, what we want to do for the future is really making sure that we are doing everything to become the highest customer ranked mobility provider in the Tampa Bay region. Next slide. You've heard several times today about our 4 goals. I'm repeating it again deliberately. We've landed on 4 goals because the thought is that these are really easy to remember, right? So be financially sustainable, to prioritize the customer experience, to support employee success, and then to enhance community value. So those are the 4 things that we're going to focus on. Those are the 4 things we focused on over the last year. What I'd say is, you know, last year, this time, we came before you to talk about the fact that we had developed through a robust engagement, internal engagement process, our vision statement. This year, what we've done is really worked with the team, again, a robust internal process to come up with the goals. As Omar mentioned, we had several goals when we started. We met with every group in the organization. We had several meetings. We had flip charts. I don't know if Omar took the charts down from his office already, but it's like a beautiful mind. If you've ever seen the movie with all the Post-its all over, Omar has a bunch of big Post-its all over his office with everybody's handwritten comments and Post-its on what the goal should be. Going through that process, we landed on these four, and we really feel like it represents where we are and what we want to accomplish. Next slide. So our successes for '22, which came out of the engagement effort, include, Danielle, successfully completing a long list of audits. So every single one of these bullets on this slide was an audit that we participated in and completed successfully in FY22. We didn't understand at the time why they were auditing us all at the same time, especially with FTA and FDOT. You'll see FDOT listed here several times, FTA here several times. But our team worked, and we really, I would say, pulled out all the tricks to make sure that we could be responsive, respond to all these audits, and still get the job done, which again is to provide service, right? So we were providing service, making sure the buses were on the road, making sure that we were providing reliable service, but then we were also working behind the scenes to respond to all these audits. So I would like to take this moment to again thank the team for really putting in your time and energy and responding to all the audits. And I want to say, like, we've closed out our triennial review for FTA. We had our last set of comments that we had to send out. We finished all of our, responses to the FDOT review. So it's an ongoing process, and we've closed them out in a very successful way. So that's a testament to a team, which primarily is comprised of a lot of new people. So we're able to roll our sleeves up and get the work done. Next slide. Also, as it relates to ridership, right? That's the bread and butter of what we're doing. We're a bus company. What you'll see here on the left side of the slide is that over the last 5 years, before COVID, we were looking at an uptick. We went from 12.2 to 13.2, so we were gaining ridership. 2020, COVID comes and it dips down. 2022, we're heading back in the right direction. On the right-hand side, which I think is important, sometimes, you see the number in a vacuum, you don't really understand the value of what the number is speaking to. But nationally, the recovery rate is 68%. In the South Atlantic region, it's 64%. Our neighbor across the bay is at 71%, and we're at 83% of our pre-COVID recovery. And again, we've talked about this, right? 2/3 of our routes have 60-minute frequency. So just imagine if we were able to say that 2/3 of our routes had 30-minute frequency, what our ridership numbers would be. But this is, again, a testament to the team for providing reliable service, and we've been moving more people, 500,000 more people this year than we did last year. Next slide, please. And taking this to the next level to really delve into the state of Florida, if you look at us for our peer group, so we're a mid-size agency, and the other peers in that category, we are above all of them. And the other thing that I thought was interesting as we were, pulling the slides together and looking at the data, we provide primarily fixed bus, paratransit, and streetcar service. And we know our streetcar service is approximately 3 miles, so we don't have a very robust streetcar service. But with those 3 modes, we're able to outperform and move more people. If you look at an agency like JTA, they have several modes. We're like twice as much, approximately, right? So we're doing a good job with what we have. Our focus has to be on being as efficient as possible and continuing to increase ridership, make our service attractive, but then also be able to find ways to make it even more frequent and more plentiful for our community. Next slide. So the opportunities for 2023. As you heard from the presentation from AlphaView, really elevating our brand and doing that with working with the partners in our community and finding opportunities to really work closer with them, if it's through sponsorships on our vehicles, if it's through sponsorships to fund frequency on routes, but really being more deliberate and really working with them to find additional revenue sources and how we'll elevate our brand through that engagement. In addition, we have to look at opportunities to add value. So if you think again about the 4 goals that we have, and the schematics on the left-hand side represent them. The first one is being financially sustainable. You know, we're really looking at route optimization and organizational realignment. And what does that mean? You know, we're looking at opportunities where we can be as efficient as possible with the service that we can put on the streets within our, I would say, within our budget and our funding. And also making sure that our organization is in alignment to provide this optimized service, but doing it at the best cost possible. Also, when we look at the customer experience, that's the next schematic, improving reliability. So Omar's talked a bit in his presentation about in FY23, we have this big influx of funds, around $14 million for new technology to provide real-time information so customers will know where the buses are and they can actually see them like you can see on your phone if you're someplace and you're trying to, you know, walk from one place to the other. You can see where you are, where your taxi is or something to that effect. But also for us internally, from a dispatcher's perspective, that we can also see where our vehicles are in the system, and we can help them to navigate if there's some sort of incident that they have to avoid an intersection or if there's a detour, and then being able to get that new information to our customers as well. So that's something that we're really going to focus on in FY23. As it relates to employee success, increasing training and development, this is key. We've heard this from the employees when we had our internal sessions. Technology is changing. This business has changed. You know, I hear so many people talk about, you know, they started off in this job way back when. They started as a mechanic, or they, Mr. Drainville is nodding his head, right? You know, but as a mechanic, even not to pick on you, sir, but as a mechanic, the way you started out maybe 30 or 40 years ago is totally different to what we're doing today. And if we're talking about moving to smarter technology for buses and our vehicles, we need to ensure that our employees are trained to utilize the new tools, the new technology, the new computer systems. So that's going to be very important for us to achieve items 1 and 2. And then as it relates to the community value you heard through the survey, is that we really have to upgrade our amenities and continue to invest in our amenities. We've been fortunate that we have worked with Congresswoman Castor's office to get earmarks for bus stops and shelters. We have to continue to be very aggressive with that type of funding and ensure that we're constantly going through and refreshing our amenities and providing the best amenities possible for our community. So those are the 4 things that we're looking to focus on for FY23. It's not a whole lot. It doesn't seem like a whole lot on the slide, but believe me, each one of these bullets takes a whole lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of commitment for the team for us to move these forward. So that's what we're working on, and we look forward to this next fiscal year. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. And with that, I'm going to pass today on the chair's report, but I am very proud of the functioning and the movement that we've had on HART this year, and how we have moved the ball forward without the dime at all. It's been very good, and I think as we move forward, we'll continue to just try to push all those possibilities. And, you know, one thing I was very impressed by that I haven't seen before in your presentation was the service number of passengers as compared to Jacksonville, Duval, West Palm, and I forget what the other item was there, and just double that service. And that is quite a bit of transit, considering our resources, even versus any of those resources that those other agencies have. That I know. So that is that's very good. So thank you for that, and we'll move to the yes. Oh, Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. This is very helpful to see, and as Chair Kemp had indicated, is being able to see how well this organization As, I can't repeat how you say the most underfunded, whatever. But put in parentheses what Chair Kemp oftentimes refers to this agency. But HART does it well. And I've had the pleasure of being on this board for the last 4 years. And I've had the pleasure of seeing so many improvements really get us there. And honing in on what's critically important when, in our priorities on how we're actually delivering services to the residents. And the business owners that are needing to have their employees move from one place to another, to our healthcare agencies that have to use HART for getting our residents from their homes to their doctor's appointments, as well as other recreational activities that they choose to use, our students in our community. I appreciate the pleasure of having an opportunity to better understand how critically important transit is in our community. And it is exciting to see that we're moving some of those needles in spite of the fact that we don't have the resources we need. And it has been interesting bringing that to the attention of our community. And I've enjoyed playing that as much as I've been able to, playing that role. Given yesterday's results, this will be my last board meeting, given that the Board of County Commission does, in fact, have a swearing-in ceremony. I believe it's the 22nd of November, and shortly after that, board appointments are done. So there will be, and since I'm not on that list, there will be a new set of board members that are appointed to HART's board at that time. So I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to thank all of you as board members for the work that you've done to support HART. It's been a pleasure. Ms. Adelaide, you are amazing. And have done a great job of bringing to attention the biggest issues to help HART move forward. We still have challenges, obviously, but I appreciate the work that you're doing. To the HART employees, thank you for everything you do every single day to provide valuable services at a higher rate than any other county that you compare to in Florida. And we've done, and I appreciate the work that you've done and support everything that you do every day. So I just wanted to have an opportunity to say thank you to all of you. I'll miss being here. Trust me, I'm not going anywhere, but I'll miss serving on the board, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. I have to say, as the chair's report, can't almost handle. Last night was quite surprising, and the Commissioner Smith also will bring you back for a thank you for sure. And I think the words are well spent. There's no commissioner on this board now that is guaranteed to be on this board, shortly. So just to, we will be seeing big changes in this and on our county commission board that has been responsible so much for trying to look at a better funding picture for HART. But with that, I'll move to the General Counsel's report. Did you have anything to share today?
Very briefly, good morning. David Smith sitting in for Julia Mandel. As you know, among the other unfortunate results we had last night, the surtax did not pass. As a consequence of that, it seems like the litigation will largely be moot, and I was going to give you an update today on the status of the appeal, but that doesn't seem to make any sense at this juncture. One other thing I would indicate, in a previous discussion, there was talk about possibly looking at your general counsel procurement processes. With risk of invading someone else's purview, I would say that when I was serving as general counsel for Hillsborough County Aviation Authority as outside general counsel, we looked at this issue. My recommendation to that board was to go in-house with their general counsel. that would seem counterproductive in terms of our position as serving as outside general counsel, but there's reasons to give that a great deal of consideration. I provided a memorandum to the board at that time. It's important that you structure the position wisely, that you get the right person for it. They hired Michael Stevens, who is just doing a great job. And it's also important that you make sure you cover on, excuse the expression, on the back end, any possibility for outside consultation the board may specifically need. But in any event, I'll share that information with the CEO, and they can make the decision that they're going to make and the recommendation to you. But with that, that would be it, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. I'd be curious to see that as well, and perhaps others, very specifically. And I would just like to note that and I didn't look at the final figures on the sales tax on transportation, but it lost very, very little despite. And so I'd like to note that it wasn't, and of course, we know it passed by 57% before. So there's, despite whatever voters arrive at the polls in Hillsborough County, there seems to be a vast understanding. Actually, I think our message has gotten out there, and people do understand the needs. And I think that that's really abundantly clear by the voters of Hillsborough County, despite just incredible challenges this time. And yet that vote was practically there. And so I'll just note that for the record, and not, it was a de minimis number that was lost by. And with that, I think I will move to old business, new business. Okay, we stand adjourned just after 11.